Dear friends, we only have an hour together, so let's start our time. First of all, I will introduce myself. I'm Erin Green, and I'm working with Pax Christi International. I help with communications, and I also help coordinate the work of the Asia Pacific region. So I'm very happy to be here and to see so many familiar faces and also a few new ones. To start, we are recording this. So if you would like privacy, please turn off your camera and change your name. You can do that now. The rest will be posted online afterwards for everyone except the two Americans are here in the middle of the night. Voice. Yeah. So please take a moment to do that now. Hey, Bianca's here. You did it. Yay. Oh, we're so glad. Okay.
Bianca.
So we have 4 short presentations for you, followed by a time of discussion. If you would like to ask a question, please put it in the chat.
Can't hear, Erin. It's Frank here.
Oh, Frank, yes, welcome.
Hello, you can't hear? Can everyone else hear me?
I'm Joko. Yeah? I'm Andreas Joko from Indonesia.
Wow, Indonesia, welcome.
Oh, welcome. Yeah. This is wonderful.
Happy to see you, Andreas.
Yeah. I am representative of FMK. Hello.
Hello.
Wonderful. Yeah. Welcome.
Yeah, nice to.
You were in the meeting in Manila.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
At that time, and thank you very much. I'm very happy. Hello, Cloud from Australia.
Hello.
Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Loretta.
Hi, Dr. C.
Hi,
Jasmine.
So if we have questions following the discussion, you can ask them at any moment in the chat function. Or let me know that you would like to ask your question over the web. So you can text it, put it in text, or you can ask in person. So to start, I will introduce our speakers. We have 4 speakers from around the world. I'm really excited for this. First, we have Anselmo Lee, and he is the co-president of Pax Christi Korea. He has been engaged in human rights, peace, and sustainable development for 30 years in Korea, Asia, and beyond, including as Secretary General of Pax Romana, ICM-ICA, and also as the Director General of National Human Rights Commission of Korea. So welcome, Anselmo, and thank you for helping organize this first webinar on Korea.
Oh, thank you for inviting.
Yeah. Our second speaker is Bianca Pabotoy from the Philippines, and she is a Woman, Peace and Security Project Officer of the Center for Peace Education at Miriam College. She's also a member of Pax Christi Philippines, one of our most active sections. She is one of the gender and disarmament focal points in the center, working on different campaigns for youth and disarmament, and was the Asia Pacific campaigner for the Control Arms Coalition at the 2019 UNGA First Committee. So welcome. And Bianca, I'm so glad you made it.
I know, me too. Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
Hi.
Internet connections are not always so easy these days. And then we have a guest who will bring a perspective from Japan, which is really wonderful and significant for this topic discussion on Korea. We have Reverend Sungjae Kim, and he is the General Secretary of the National Christian Council in Japan. And he is coming to us after working 28 years in ministry for the Korean Church in Japan. And he is highly involved in peacemaking with both Catholic members in Japan, as well as interfaith activity relating to Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution. And last but certainly not least, we have our friend who has gotten up in the middle of the night to join us live. So Doug, thank you for that. We welcome Doug Hostetter, and he is a member of the Pax Christi International Advocacy Team at the United Nations in New York. Doug refused military service during the Vietnam War, but worked as a conscientious objector with the Mennonite Central Committee in Vietnam during the height of the war, doing literacy work with the Vietnamese refugee children whose schools had been destroyed by the US military. Doug has spent his life working for justice and peace in the US, Latin America, the Middle East, and Asia. And he has also visited North Korea with the Mennonite Central Committee and has done peace building with art from North Korea, South Korea, China, and the US, with North Korean diplomats at the United Nations. So welcome, Doug, welcome all to our distinguished panel.
Hello.
And I will turn it over to Anselmo for his presentation.
Okay, let me use. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This is a poster about first. I'm very happy to be a speaker of the first tour of the Asia Pacific Peace. I prepared the PowerPoints. Since time is very limited, let me use this PowerPoint to explain one by one. As you know, Pax Christi Korea is brand new, just slightly more than 1 year. We have a logo, so Korean Peninsula, but our name is not Pax Christi South Korea. You know, we believe one day will be United Korea, so that's why purposely we use the name Korea. You know, okay, so. I pick up some pictures for help you to understand who and what we are doing. This is a photo of founding assembly only 1 year ago. And then we have about 200 or 300 members, including the bishops and priests. And then at the moment, we are doing the two campaigns. One is a signature campaign about TPNW. I'm sure some of you are very familiar with that, Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, because South Korea, we are talking about nuclear, but none of the countries, including both North and South Korea and surrounding countries, ratified this one, you know. So this is a campaign we are engaging with a group. You can see the people here with the rain group. These are the people who are the victims, Korean victims of nuclear bomb in Nagasaki, Hiroshima. We went to Nagasaki last year with them to join the paper mass when Pope visited Japan. From there, we discussed with them how to do follow-up. And then our idea was to let's do more campaign jointly. So we are doing together with this group, you know, the campaign. And then we are submitting this petition to UN. And the second part is this peace campaign. There's a slogan, 70 years enough. This year is the 75th anniversary UN, but Korean War broke out, as you know, 1950. You know? So we are doing this campaign. It's a coalition of CSOs and also the peace NGOs together. The Mary from United States, she sent us the link by email some time ago, but I was waiting because I want to present this one to you first, and then we are going to launch formally the global campaign among the Pax Christi members with the help of Erin. Okay, so let me explain briefly about this campaign. In order to join this campaign, it's important for you to understand a little bit of history and the geopolitics around the Korean Peninsula. So this is a logo and the Korean War. People might be wondering, what war, you know? 70 years ago, still we are at war, technically, you know. So that's I want to explain briefly. You know, campaign title is Korea Peace Appeal, because Pax Christi Korea is a part of this coalition. So there's a link. I send a link in the chatting room, so you can click and get more information, and so you can join formally, you know, this campaign. Okay, there are the four key components. First one is end the Korean War, establish peace agreements. This is the first campaign purpose. And second one is create the Korean Peninsula, a world free from nuclear weapons and nuclear threats. This one, you know. So it's a kind of sequence, the Korean War and the nuclear weapons. And the third one is resolve conflict with a dialogue and cooperation instead of sanctions and pressure. As you know, North Korea is under sanction and economic sanction because of nuclear development. But we believe there should be a more effective way to address this conflict. The third one, last one is, I think the Bianca is an expert on this issue, arms race, you know, disarmament issues. You know, because as the Pope made the appeal the last month, and they, instead of investing more in, you know, arms industry, whether we can divert that investment into human security and environmental sustainability. These are the four main campaigns. This very much in line with what Pax Christi have been doing, right? So we are doing also naturally as a part of Korean CSO coalition on this. Let me explain a little bit more about the background. As you see, these are 70 Years Enough campaign. There are a lot of campaign, seminar, workshop here and there, especially women's group. They are very active. There's also international women's group crossing DMZ. You know, they went to North Korea, coming down, trying to really play the bridge role, you know, as Doug did before, you know. I'm still doing, Doug is still doing the bridge role between the North and South to understand the root causes of the conflict and then find a permanent solution to this conflict, you know. So now I'm very interestingly, our president, he made an address at the UN General Assembly, exactly the same as our campaign, you know, but we didn't get any the order from the government. We are independent campaign, but government also agreed to this, basically the campaign. That's why the President Moon, he made a speech at the UN General Assembly, and he highlighted 70th anniversary of outbreak of Korea War. And also he said very clearly, I believe it begins to declaring an end to war. He said the begins, it's not the end, you know. So end of war declaration is a beginning towards journey toward denuclearization in Korean Peninsula. You know? So this is a basic perspective. So he made very clearly in the last sentence, denuclearization and permanent peace regime. I'm stressing this one very much because there's a debate and also suspicion whether Korean Peninsula, end of Korea war, give the excuse to North Korea for nuclear power, you know, not at all, you know. This is a way to make whole Korean Peninsula nuclear weapon free, you know. So that's why I want to highlight that perspective again. And then let me briefly, Korean War was known as a forgotten, you know, especially in the United States, you know. So not many people know about this Korean War, you know. So this forgotten war. So this is the 70th anniversary. And briefly about 1975, those who are not familiar with the history of Korean Peninsula conflict, as you know, 1945, very important year because it's a year of Pax Christi International. You remember this year is the 75th anniversary of Pax Christi International. At the same time, the first nuclear bomb in Hiroshima, Nagasaki. And then next week, Japan, Imperial Japan surrender and Korea liberated, you know. Then Korea, because it's all interconnected, you know, because geopolitics, the Pacific War and atomic bomb, and then surrender of Japan, liberation, and then 3 years later, Korean War, you know, or 5 years later, you know. That's why it's important to understand Korean War is not between North and South Korea, you know. This is an international war, you know. We are victim of geopolitics around that time, you know. So that's very important perspective. But when we were liberated, we were not able to have our own government, unfortunately, you know. And then instead, American military regime came, you know, so-called trustship, you know, on the military, you know, for 3 years. Then we have an election. Unfortunately, not unified election, separately North, separately South. That time, as you know, North occupied by Russian, Soviet Union, and South by United States. Okay, that was the structural causes of the Korean War, you know, that division from 1945-48. You know? So as you see, 1950, June 25, there's a Korean War. North Korea invaded South with the support from Soviet Union and China. And then, you know, the Korean War was the first UN official resolution of Security Council, the first UN troops. And then with the help of United Nations Army, including many countries, New Zealand, Japan, and Philippines, and then we are able to maintain the stability around. So that time is 38 parallel. Now we have DMZ, you know? Okay, so this is where we are now. So now let me explain. This is a short description of what I said, you know. This is a text from the campaign material. So the historical background, the Cold War and Korean War, and the armistice agreement. That's why we say, technically we are at war, you know. Armistice, ceasefire temporarily, but they were not able to agree on the permanent measures to resolve this conflict. And then, as a result of Korean War, a lot of separated family, you know. For instance, my own family, my father and then my uncle, they came from North Korea, you know. So all my relatives from father's side, they are in North Korea, but never, no communication at all, you know, since I was born, you know. My father died 10 years ago. He used to tell me about his childhood, you know, in North Korea, but we are not able to see the photo, no communication at all. So 1/4 of the South Korean family, they are separated, you know. So sometimes people outside, difficult to understand North and South Korea relationship, you know. Because really, you know, the family relations, many things, and also we are killing each other during Korean War because of different ideology and so on and so on. It's very complex, you know, the North-South Korean relationship. And then 1991, as you know, the Cold War was over, and then there was a dialogue beginning. As you may know, do you know when South and North Korea joined UN? I don't know whether you have. Because during Cold War, North Korea want to join UN, but United States veto. You know? South Korea want to join UN, Soviet Union veto. You know? So neither of them were able to join United Nations because of veto. So after World War, you know, the Cold War, 1991, they finally agreed, okay, let's join together. So 1991 only, they joined UN together without veto, either from United States and Soviet Union. So 91, it's a result of the end of Korean War, you know. And then year 2000, there was a first summit in the Kim Dae-jung government. By the way, Kim Dae-jung is the Catholic, and also President Moon, the current president, also Catholic. So when we had the Catholic president, they were really engaged reconciliation with the North Korea, you know, or peace process. You know, so the first summit was the year 2000, almost 20 years ago. And then there's a short period of time, there's a peace process, and then broke. And then again, the conflict or tension. And then 2018, 2017, as you may remember, there was a conflict escalation between North Korea and the United States, because North Korea developed nuclear weapons and also ICBM, the missile, you know, threatening the United States, and also sanctioned by United States and also United Nations. So they was almost at the brink of the real war, you know, according to the testimony from some of the high officials of the United States. United States was really thinking about attacking North Korea with the nuclear or any the weapons. And then that time we have the candlelight demonstration, and then peaceful regime change. So when we have the President Moon, and then we have the Winter Olympic, the Pyeongchang Winter Olympic, which was a very good, important turning point. So there was a vice president from United States, Pence. He was in Pyeongchang Peace Olympic, Winter Olympic, and also the sister of the Kim Jong-un. So this was the beginning of the dialogue in Pyeongchang. And then since then, for almost 1 year, there was a really interesting dialogue between both North and South Korea and also United States. But unfortunately, the peace negotiation process was not able to reach agreement between North Korea and United States, because how to do the denuclearize. Both say, okay, we are working for peace, we are working for denuclearization, but question is how, you know. You know, as you know, the devils are in the detail, you know. So they were not able to agree, and then this process broken, you know. So now still deadlock, you know. So let me explain briefly with so these are short chronology of the peace process. We call peace process 2018. There's a Pyeongchang Winter Olympic, and then Panmunjom Inter-Korea Summit. Panmunjom is a border between North and South Korea, DMZ, demilitarized zone. And then the first historic summit in Singapore, June 2018. And then Pyongyang Summit, because our president was able to visit Pyongyang. And 2019, Hanoi, Vietnam. But this is second summit, they were not able to agree on how to do denuclearization in North Korea, you know. So there's and then there was another attempt to find a way forward, but they were not able to agree on any substantive issues. And then lastly, there was explosion of joint liaison office in Kaesong, North Korea, which is a symbol of dialogue and reconciliation between North and Korea. And then since then, there's a lot of hostilities again, back to the old days. And then still, we are trying to recover this peace process. So that's why our campaign, the end of war campaign, and also President called for end of war declaration. This is also a way to restart the peace process as we did in the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. But it very much depends on the result of the president election in the United States. So I don't think there will be any substantive changes or progress until the American election, and then whether Trump or Biden, and then when new administration comes into power, and then there's a new process will start. So these are some of the images, cartoons, and photos about what happened the last 2 years. This is a nuclear threat from North Korea to United States, and this is a Pyeongchang Olympic. That's why we have Pax Christi Korea heavily engaged the Pyeongchang Peace Forum to commemorate this Pyeongchang Peace Olympic. Every year we have this Pyeongchang Peace Forum, and then Pax Christi members, Bishop Mark, he has been in the Pyeongchang Peace Forum this year. And this is a photo of both President Moon and Kim Jong-un of North Korea. That time it was a very good time, good mood, but now it's very cold. And this is a famous historic summit in Singapore, and also Panmunjom. It's like a reality show, you know. The President Trump and the Kim Jong-un, they met, shaking hands, but nothing substantive out of this meeting, you know. And this is the explosion of the liaison office in Kaesong. Kaesong is like an industrial complex in North Korea. With the support, financial support from South Korea, they built this one and they exploded because North Korea was not very happy at all about the no progress between, you know, the implementation of Singapore Summit Declaration, because North Korea was expecting the easing or lifting of sanctions so that they can do more about economic development without giving up nuclear, you know. But United States didn't want to lift sanctions until North Korea made a very clear commitment to denuclearization. So they were not able to meet in between, you know. That's why North Korea was not happy, because North Korea was expecting South Korea to play the role between. But of course, South Korea did, but they were not happy. That's why North Korea expressed their dissatisfaction or disappointment with the North Korea by exploding this building, you know, very symbolic, you know, unfortunately.
Anselmo, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have some questions that are coming in, and I think we also want to make sure we have time for discussion among the panelists.
Yeah,
so
okay,
maybe
so almost finishing. Yeah, 1 minute, let me finish. Yeah. So these are, you can read this text. It's already available. I don't want to go into detail. So that's why we are committing to this campaign, you know, formally end to Korea War as a way to start the dialogue process towards the denuclearization. Okay, the rest I think you can read. And then these all the campaign materials are available in Japanese, French, Spanish, German, and Russian. And also you can join the signature campaign, you know. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much for your listening. I will answer if you have any question and then provide more explanation. Okay, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anselmo, for that great overview with great visuals. I see we have a few questions. If you have more, put them in the chat. And now we'll move to Bianca Pabotoy in the Philippines for a different perspective. Bianca, over to you.
Thank you. Wait, I'm just sharing. Okay, there. View percent. There we go. There we go. Wait. Struggling with the share screen. There we go. Anyway, is that all right? Can you see the
It looks great.
presentation? Okay, cool. So Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good evening. Thank you, Erin, and thank you, Anselmo, for opening this webinar. So just to give you an overview of the peace building and partnerships between the Philippines and Korea, for over 60 years, the Philippines and South Korea specifically have nurtured a friendship, a partnership that began with military collaboration and lives on to this day in the form of deeper and more comprehensive cooperation in diverse areas such as trade, political security concerns, and social cultural exchanges. So just an overview, in terms of tourism, in 2019, South Korea remained the biggest source of visitors for the country, reaching around 1.4 million arrivals. On trade and economic ties, South Korea is currently a major trading partner of the Philippines. And according to 2017 data from the EU Commission, the Philippines is North Korea's largest trading partner in the ASEAN and fourth largest in the world after China, India, and Russia. Oopsies, wait, let me just edit that. Wait, there we go. So in terms of the Philippines and Korea and the Korean War, when the Korean War broke out in 1950, the Philippines sent 7,420 soldiers to South Korea through the Philippine Expeditionary Force to Korea for over a 5-year period. And among them were actually former Philippine President Fidel Ramos. And just a quick trivia, there we go. The Korean War is enshrined in the Philippine currency. So at the back of the 500 peso bill, it's around 12,000 Korean won. It's a picture of our hero, Benigno Aquino, who was a war correspondent during the Korean War. And beside this picture is one of his articles entitled First Cavalry Knives Through the 38th Parallel. So just a quick trivia. And well, for us at CPE and Pax Christi Philippines, Center for Peace Education, Miriam College, officially ending the war is an important objective as our official position remains. War is an illegitimate way of resolving conflicts. Some ties, we also have mutual defense treaties with the USA. So as we all know, America's largest overseas military base, where the United Nations Command Headquarters is also located, Camp Humphreys is in Korea. And while there are no more US bases in the Philippines, we do have a visiting forces agreement, which again provides simplified access procedures to Philippines for US service members on official business, for example, bilateral training or military exercises. And it provides a series of procedures for how to resolve issues that may come up as a result of US forces being present in the Philippines. As of June 2020, the government of the Philippines has suspended its plan to revoke the bilateral visiting forces agreement, and this decision is meant to last for 6 months. And so any conflict on the peninsula also poses an indirect risk to the Philippines because of the mutual defense treaty with the US. North Korea made a statement that they would not hesitate to target any country that would support US military actions against them. Next, we've also had our fair share of peace talks. So in September, we commemorate the 2nd anniversary of the accord signed between South Korean President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. And while in the Philippines, through the Philippines Office of the Presidential Advisor on the Peace Process, an office assisting the President in coordinating peace efforts, a number of peace agreements have been signed. And one notable peace agreement was the 2015 Comprehensive Agreement on the Bangsamoro, which is the photo in the slide, which was hailed to be a very gender-inclusive peace process, having the first woman, Miriam Coronel Ferrer, to sign a major peace agreement in the world. And she was under a peace process office whose chief, Teresita Quintos Deles, was also a woman. And on denuclearization in the region, in various statements, the Philippines and the ASEAN is an active supporter of the inter-Korean peace process and reconciliation efforts. It joins the international call for the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula as a crucial step for the security and continued economic development of the region, and strongly advocates a diplomatic solution to the North Korea nuclear issue, particularly through multilateral dialogue. Our office and Pax Christi Philippines have been active campaigners of various global coalitions working on disarmament and arms control, such as the International Action Network on Small Arms, Control Arms, and International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. We have been continuously active in the advocacy and campaign work for the Philippine government to then sign and now ratify the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. And our office and Pax Christi Philippines is firm on its stance of supporting the need for a ban of nuclear weapons because no state is immune to these consequences. People in neighboring and distant states who have nothing to do with the conflict, including those belonging to nuclear weapon-free zones, would suffer from the effects of radioactive fallout and climate disruption. And there are thousands of Filipinos living in South Korea, Japan, and China. So aside from being key sources of overseas Filipino workers' remittances, the three countries are major trading partners, investors, and tourist markets of the Philippines. Therefore, any serious instability or conflict in the Korean Peninsula would have enormous domestic, political, and economic impacts on the Philippines. And lastly, Pax Christi Philippines and Pax Christi Korea. So how do we cooperate and moving forward? First of all, mutual support for each other's causes. For example, we sign statements on key issues within our countries and share the statements with each other. Provide information and advice as needed. So for example, when our office and Pax Christi Philippines consulted Pax Christi Korea regarding Korean peace groups operating in the country. Knowledge sharing as needed when our office co-facilitated a peace education seminar for the Northeast Asia Peacebuilding Institute held in Korea, and Anselmo organized a peacebuilding conference in 2018, which our office participated in. And lastly, of course, social media support. The Philippines has 74 million Facebook users in 2019 alone, and South Korea is estimated to have around 45 million social network users by 2025. So we find ways such as this webinar to maximize the internet as a tool to connect with each other and a tool to elevate the discussions of peace beyond our borders. So I end my sharing here. Thank you very, very much.
Wow,
Over
very
to you,
good.
Erin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bianca, that was terrific, both for the trivia and the visuals, but also it's really interesting to hear about the bilateral relationship between the two countries, but also between the two Pax Christi sections. That was really great. Thank you for that. And now we'll continue our little tour. If you have questions for Bianca, drop them in the chat and hopefully we'll have some time for discussion afterwards. And now we will turn to Reverend Kim, who is joining us from Japan and has a presentation for us.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I was asked to participate in this program the day before yesterday, so I have no enough preparation. But I'm so exciting now to be here. And actually, I'm an ethnic minority in Japan. I was born in Japan as a Korean almost third generation. And at the same time here now in this Zoom conference, I'm also a minority because I'm from a Protestant among the Catholic friends. Okay, let me describe about the relationship between Japan and Korea, particularly South Korea. Erin, may I ask you to share my paper on this Zoom?
Do you want me to send the document or do you want me to put it on the screen?
On the screen, okay.
Okay. Yeah, just a moment. I will, let me do that. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Voila.
NCC, Japan Christian Council in Japan was established in 1948, 3 years after the end of Japan's Pacific and Asian wars and the colonial rules, including Korea. NCCJ has the background of establishment theological reflection upon war responsibility of Japanese Christianity, as well as WCC that was also established in 1948. NCCJ's ecumenical and theological attitude, based on reflection upon the war, I can say, was embodied as honest support for and solidarity with democratic struggles by Christians of South Korea in 1970s under dictatorship. It can be regarded as confession on the war responsibility and Japan's colonial rule over Korea. NCCJ made great contribution to making successful of the Tozanso Conference in 1984 that was convened by WCC, World Council of Churches, together with NCCK and NCCJ for agreeing to define the issue of Korean Peninsula's reunification as a crucial task of worldly ecumenical mission. Since then, NCCJ has been involved in process of lots of activities organized by WCC and NCCK. Finally, these ecumenical activities led to the South and North Summit of Koreas in April of 2018. And therefore, we call the period from 1984 to 2018 as a Tozanso process, and the time after April of 2018 onward as a Panmunjom process. And okay, let me skip to another red part. The rise of a Moon Jae-in regime affected the unresolved problem from before 1945 as a result of Japan's colonial rule over Korea from 1910 to 1945. Those typical cases are the issues of euphemistically so-called comfort women forced to provide sex service to Japanese soldiers and forced laborers during World War II. The Moon Jae-in regime took position to be supportive to restore human rights and the dignity of those war victims. In the time of colonial rule, the Abe Abe regime started to increasingly enhance antagonistic attitude to South Korea, particularly from July of the last year, by implementing more restriction over trade and corporate sharing of military information, GSOMIA. Both countries faced serious deterioration of relationship. Deadlock between both countries have never been resolved even after January of this year, when the crisis of COVID-19 began to spread. When NCC and NCCK held the joint conference at the end of May in last year, both NCCs invited peacemaking activists, not only from Christian, but also from Buddhist and non-religious civil groups struggling for keeping Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution that renounces war eternally. That gathering developed into a plan to build up a new platform to connect peacemaking movements between religious groups and civil groups, and bridge platforms of peacemaking between Japan and South Korea. We repeatedly discussed how the platform for reconciliation and peace can be organized between both countries and what our joint tasks are. finally we reached establishment of the platform through online system between Japan and South Korea on July 2nd of this year. Regarding members of this platform, both Catholic and Protestant members are included. And we found a new way to work together for peacemaking. August 15 of this year is a monumental day for both countries, namely the Day of Surrender for Japan on the one hand, and the Day of liberation from colonial rule for South Korea and Korea on the other. Our platform issued a joint statement on August 12 for reconfirming serious issues of history between both countries and our way to go towards through reconciliation and peace, not only between both countries, but also in Northeast Asia without nuclear weapons over beyond historical conflict. I do hope the Catholic and Protestant churches will more and more used in solidarity of prayer and peacemaking activities by the Lord, who are patiently and consistently getting close to reconciliation and peace in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank
Reverend
you.
Kim, thank you so much. That was wonderful. It's really special for us to hear more about the situation in Japan, but also about the importance of both an ecumenical and an interfaith perspective. So it's wonderful for us to hear more, especially since there are so few Christians in Japan. It's really wonderful. So last, but certainly not least, we have our colleague Doug, who is presenting for us from some of his experiences over the years in working in the Korean Peninsula. So I will share a presentation for Doug. It will start with about a 1-minute video, and then it will move into some images. So let me see.
Okay, I will go ahead and speak while Aaron is running through some of the pictures from my trip to North Korea. I think I thought it was important to share photos from North Korea because North Korea is probably the least understood part of the world in which very few people have had direct access to it. I was able to travel there in a learning tour with the Mennonite Central Committee about 10 years ago. The Mennonites have been working in North Korea for 24 years, working mainly in agricultural exchange, in nutritional work with children, assistance to orphanages, and also currently they're working with 3 pediatric hospitals in North Korea. my trip to North Korea taught me a number of things. Probably the primary impression that I came back with was that the North Koreans were very frightened of being attacked by the United States and South Korea. I kept trying to tell them I didn't think this was going to happen, that they were very close to China, and I didn't think that there would be an attack against them. But North Korea was very much devastated during the Korean War. And since the Korean War, it has been extremely isolated. And so you would find defense mechanisms set up in hilly roads. And when you would ask, why is this big tower here? The local people would explain, well, when the Americans attack, we will push over these towers so that their tanks cannot get through these hills here. Another place, we were traveling on a big road down not too far from the DMZ, and there were no traffic on the road, and the road was a 6-lane highway. And I asked my guide, I said, why would you have a 6-lane highway and there's no traffic as far as I could see in front of us or behind us? And they said, well, they know that when the Americans attack, they will destroy our airports and we will be able to land our planes on these roads. So it was, they are very much afraid. And I think their whole nuclear program is very much to protect themselves from being attacked from the United States and South Korea. They know that economically and even militarily, they cannot really match either South Korea or the US. So they have tried to find a way that was more inexpensive that they could keep themselves from being attacked. The other thing that I learned is that North Koreans are just like people everywhere. They want the same kind of things that South Koreans, Americans, and all people want. They want safety for their children. They want an education. They want jobs. They want good health care. They care for their families. They care for their country. And they want to be a part of a strong community and a strong nation. So those were pictures of people from North Korea because I wanted you to meet those people directly to be able to see the humanity of these people who are often demonized in the media in the West. So over the years, I have worked both in humanitarian effort, in trying to do direct aid, but also worked at the United Nations with North Korean diplomats. One of the wonderful things about the United Nations is that it is a place where one can meet diplomats from North Korea. And so there are several ways in which we as Pax Christi work in relationship to North Korea. One is we do advocacy for peace, to kind of lift the embargo, to allow humanitarian aid to get through, and to try to embarrass countries that are supporting sanctions which are hurting ordinary Koreans in North Korea. We do this primarily through the non-governmental working group that meets around the Security Council. And so several times a month, we will usually meet with ambassadors and have a chance for off-the-record meetings to meet with them. And very often we raise issues about North Korea. The other thing is to meet directly with North Koreans in New York. So for the past 2 years, I have helped to organize a major conference at Columbia University, the Global Peace Forum on Korea, which brought together people from around the world, many from South Korea, a few from Japan, from China, from Russia, and from Canada and other countries, religious leaders, peace activists, and diplomats, because it was the one place where they could meet North Koreans. And we got the cooperation of the North Korean mission to the UN, and the diplomats would come to our meetings. The United Nations told us these were the only meetings that they have ever been to in which the North Koreans actually came and participated in the meetings. Meetings where there were journalists from South Korea, from Japan, from other places. They would give presentations, they would talk with the people and engage in the meetings. The other thing has been on a very personal level. My home is just 25 miles from the center of New York, and North Korean diplomats are restricted to only traveling in the United States in 25 miles of Columbus Circle in New York. My home is just inside of that area that they are allowed to travel. So several times I've invited North Korean diplomats to my home for a picnic, to fish in a small stream behind my house, to meet them as individuals, and then to invite South Korean friends, Korean American friends, and other peace activists to meet with them. These have been wonderful occasions. I'll tell you one story from this. One of the diplomats who I had known for some time, who had returned to North Korea, we had been out of touch for a year, and I came to the office one day and had a call from him, and I immediately called him back, and he said, "I'm across the street at the UN, come and meet me. My wife has sent some gifts for you." So I quick grabbed some gifts and went over to him, and we exchanged gifts. And then he said, "Do you remember the picture of you and your wife and me and my wife that you took at the first picnic that we had at your house?" And I said, "Yes, I was really sorry you never allowed me to publish this because you said it was personal, but you did want a picture." And he said, "Yes." He said, "I took that picture home and it is on the wall of my apartment in Pyongyang." And he said, "Do you know, none of my Korean friends can believe that I have an American friend." And I say, "Yes, I have a very good friend in New York." And I laughed and I said, "Actually, the same is true with me. None of my American friends can believe that I have a North Korean friend in New York and among the diplomats." So this meeting with North Koreans, getting to know them as people, is, I think, the basic work of peace building and one of the ways in which we work in New York. Thank you.
Doug, bravo, thank you for that. That was wonderful to hear more anecdotes from your perspective. How providential you live where you live. You'll never be able to move. That's it, only closer. This is great. We have just a few minutes. I see that there's quite some chat going on. So I have one question for Anselmo and one for Reverend Kim that I see. Anselmo, could you say a word about how other parts of the Pax Christi International movement can support the peace processes that are important between the north and south part of the Korean Peninsula? How can we support you?
I think the first one is, as I invited all of you, you can sign this Korea Peace Appeal campaign. This is the first step. And then now the PCK, we are preparing as a part of this campaign, our own initiative within Pax Christi family, Pax Christi family. For instance, as I put in the chatting room, I think we can be more ambitious, as Doug said, can we organize someday, of course, it depends on the political climate, and the peace mission to North Korea, as a bridge. So this can be also one way, because, there was an idea of Pope Francis visiting North Korea and China, but there is anymore, but we can still try, as a Catholic official peace movement, as Saint Francis did, the 11th century, and he visited, the Jerusalem alone, very brave, can we dream or something like that, as a peace mission, especially with the dog and few others. Dog can play the, some role, so anyway, so these are some of the idea I have in mind, Yeah, first signing this, the campaign, and then more, because we need a little bit more study about Korean Peninsula. It's very complicated. It's not between North and South Korea issues, Although we are united, now problem is we are part of geopolitical US-China confrontation, and also Russia, Japan. But luckily, the Southeast Asia is a nuclear weapon-free zone, and Mongolia and Central Asia. We are missing link. North Korea, Northeast Asia missing link, So can we use this nuclear crisis as an opportunity to pursue the regional nuclear weapon-free zone, For that, we need the support from Southeast Asia, New Zealand, Australia. You are now living in the nuclear weapon-free zone, except Northeast Asia, So let's work together for that vision, It's not only Korean Peninsula, but entire whole East Asia, starting from Central Asia, Mongolia, Korean Peninsula, Southeast Asia. We are between United States and then China, this confrontation. So we have to strengthen our own, like a in between, Okay, thank you. Let me stop here.
I could add a little to that. In my conversations with North Korean diplomats at the UN, we had actually planned this year to have our third Global Peace Forum, like you attended last year.
Yes, right. Yep.
And the third one was actually supposed to be in Beijing. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, we have had to postpone it. But the agreement with the North Korean diplomats was that we would meet for several days in Beijing, and then all of the participants at the conference who wanted would be welcome to come to North Korea for a 4 or 5 day visit. So we are still hoping that that will happen, and we will be inviting again religious leaders, scholars, and peace activists to participate in this.
Okay.
And I have one short but difficult question for Reverend Kim, and then I will turn it over to my colleague Yasmin in the Philippines for an announcement about our next webinar. So Reverend Kim, someone would like to know, why is there a historically difficult relationship between Korea and Japan? Can you tell us more about that? Why?
This is a very serious problem because, even after the Second World War finished, Japan never apologized historical responsibility regarding the colonialization of Korea. And Japan never acknowledged that war as an invasion. So, Japan always Japanese government always justify. On the one hand, Japan feels sorry about the colonization over Korean Peninsula. But on the other hand, always Japanese government try to justify the colonization over Korea as a way to protect peace of East Asia from Russian invasion. So at the same time, Japan, try to point out the contribution of colonization to the development of Korea, culturally, economically. But however, South Korea can never accept those understanding of the history. So, at the same time, this is a reason, always antagonism against South Korea by Japanese government happened. So always we are still struggling with that issue. At the same time, Article 9 that renounced the wars eternally is based upon the reflection upon the invasive war. But recently, particularly since 1990s, Japanese government is going ultra-right trend direction. And the Japanese government attempts to revise the Article 9 so that Japan can increase, armament. So Japan needs a separation. For that purpose, Japan needs a separation of Korean Peninsula. Japan always needs a threat from North Korea. And so Japan tried to strengthen the security system between United States and Japan. Always United States welcome that policy, Japanese policy. This is a background, political background.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And our time is up, unfortunately. This has been really interesting and so lovely to hear different perspectives from all over the world, truly. And I thank you again to Bangsamoro and Pax Christi Korea for helping us with this first in the series. I think it was a great way. We have now a high standard for the rest of them. And I'm sure that everyone who is able to join us today has learned something. I know I certainly have. We'll post a video online, and so we can share it with other folks who are not awake yet. And now I will turn it over to our colleague, Dr. Yasmin Nario-Galas in the Philippines, and she will invite you to the next webinar in this series. So Yasmin, if you are there, you have the floor.
Hello, Erin. Hello, everyone. So can we screen share, Erin, show our poster for the next webinar. As Erin is doing that, I just also want to add my word of thanks to the speakers. 1 hour is too short for such meaningful topics. And it's wonderful to see friends, from Asia Pacific and from Pax Christi International. Thank you. So we'd like to invite you to the next webinar. This is actually Pax Christi's, gift, to commemorate or to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the UN Security Council Resolution on Women, Peace and Security. That's UNSCR 1325. And so we're going to, feature a woman doing different kinds of peace work, peace education, peace building, peacekeeping, and it's going to be very exciting. So it's going to be a talk show in a talk show format. So we will have hosts who will be asking our guest speakers, various questions. So we have invited, a mediator, someone working for government, a parliamentarian, and these are people actually, coming from different ethnicities, so and also coming from different generations. So I hope that you'll be able to attend the webinar. This is going to be on October 27 at the same time. So that's 3 p.m. Manila time. So please invite your friends, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
Hey,
Thank
great.
you. Yeah, this looks really great. I'm really excited. I put the registration link in the chat. So just before you leave, click on it, sign up, tell your friends, and we're going to start publicizing it more broadly tomorrow. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to our speakers, and thank you to everyone who took time out to join us. It's really nice to have this community at this time. So take care, everyone. Stay safe until we see you again.
Can I
Thank
make
you.
one
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.